Welcome. Today's session is all about understanding and analyzing graphs using NetworkX. Did you know graphs are a powerful way to map relationships and interactions? From social connections to transportation systems, graphs are everywhere. Let's dive in and learn how to uncover hidden insights in networks using Python's networks library. I promise by the end of this session, you'll see the world a little differently. Through the lens of networks, in this chapter, we'll lay the foundation for understanding network science. Why are graphs so important? Because they reveal structures and patterns in data that other methods might miss. Think of graphs as the language of connections, whether it's people, cities, or even proteins in your body. Graphs help us make sense of complex systems. This is your roadmap to exploring how networks shape the world around us. Before we nerd out on graphs, let's start with the basics. What exactly is a graph? Think of it like a map for relationships. It's made up of points called nodes and lines called edges that connect them. Whether you're mapping friendships on Facebook or flight routes across the globe, graphs are the ultimate tool for understanding connections. Let's explore the core concept. A graph might sound abstract, but you're already familiar with the concept in real life. Imagine nodes as people and edges as friendships. Boom, you've got Facebook's friend graph, or perhaps think of cities, see nodes connected by highways, sedges. That's a transportation network. Graphs are powerful because they help us model relationships in a way that's easy to analyze and visualize. In this session, we'll break graphs into bite-sized chunks and see their endless capabilities. Every graph consists of two main components, nodes and edges. Think of nodes as dots and edges as the lines connecting them. For example, in a map, cities are nodes and roads between them are edges. Directed edges are like one-way streets, while undirected edges are like two-way streets. Weighted edges are useful when some connections are more important or costly. Imagine a flight network where the edge weights could represent ticket prices or travel time. Understanding these basic components sets the foundation for all graph analysis. Graphs aren't just abstract math, they're everywhere, whether it's uncovering trends in social media, analyzing transportation systems, or mapping biological pathways. Graphs give us a way to model complex systems simply. In the next few slides, we'll explore how graphs show up in the world around us. Pay attention as we might dive into an example that resonates with your field of interest. Graphs model so many things we interact with every day. Think about social media. Every friend or follower relationship forms a giant web of connections. Transportation is another great example. Consider how Uber uses graphs where drivers, passengers, and routes form a system of nodes and edges. Finally, biology has its own graphs. Scientists can predict outbreaks or study cures by analyzing networks of genes or proteins. By the end of this session, you'll see how versatile and powerful graphs really are. Why spend the time to study graphs? Because graphs allow us to simplify and understand incredibly complex systems. They help us visualize relationships, uncover hidden patterns, analyze influences, and even solve real world problems like transportation optimization or finding key influencers in a social network. Mastering graph concepts provides essential tools for cutting edge work across industries, from data science and machine learning to urban planning and biology. Graphs are like magic lenses through which we can see and simplify the world's complexity. For instance, think about how you use Google Maps to find the shortest route. Behind the scenes, That's a graph solving a real world problem. Whether it's understanding social media relationships, predicting disease spread, or optimizing logistics, graphs help us find meaning in what looks chaotic at first glance. They're powerful because they make complexity manageable. Always ask yourself, how are things connected? What can I learn from those connections? Think of how you interact with the world every day, checking your social media feed, getting Netflix to recommend your next movie, or catching the ride with the least traffic. All these are powered by graphs. For example, social media platforms use graph analysis to identify influencers, those central nodes in the network where information flows most effectively. Or think about Uber or Lyft. They're using graph structures to map traffic in real time and connect drivers with riders. Graphs aren't just theoretical, they're embedded into the systems shaping our lives. Graphs come in all shapes and sizes, depending on the kinds of relationships you want to model. For example, is the relationship one way like followers on Instagram, or mutuals like friendships? Are the connections equal as like subway stations, or weighted like longer vias, shorter train routes? Understanding these distinctions helps you pick the right graph model for your data. Let's break this down further. Choosing the right graph type is like choosing the right lens for a camera. You need the right perspective for the problem at hand. For example, if you're analyzing subway routes, you'd likely use a weighted graph where edge weights represent time or distance. On the other hand, if you're exploring friendships, an unweighted, undirected graph makes more sense. It's all about tailoring the graph to fit the real world relationships you're modeling. Remember, graphs are versatile tools. You just need to know when and how to use them. Let's start with a fun analogy. Think of a simple graph like a one-way street between two cities, clean and straightforward. A multigraph, on the other hand, is more like a multi-lane freeway, multiple connections serving different purposes. Multigraphs are great when representing complex relationships like the overlap of professional and personal ties between two people. As we move forward, think about how these distinctions apply to real-world systems around you, such as Twitter followers as directed graph or transportation routes, undirected multigraph with weights. This table gives you a quick reference to the variety of graph types. Undirected graphs are like friendships, mutual and without a clear direction. Directed graphs, by contrast, are like one-sided relationships, such as following someone on Instagram who doesn't follow back. Weighted graphs introduce additional context, like how long a road is between two places. Finally, multigraphs shine when there are multiple ways to connect these same nodes. Think of LinkedIn for colleagues and Instagram for friends. Keep this framework in mind as we dive deeper into network applications. Before we move into deeper applications, it's essential to nail down the basics. Think of this section as your toolbox. Every term here, degree, path, clustering, will be something you'll employ repeatedly in graph analysis. So stay with me as we break down these concepts into bite-sized yet powerful ideas. Let's break it down in a fun and relatable way. Degree, that's like how many people you regularly text. The more chats, the more connected you are. And paths, think of them like finding your way to a friend's house. There might be a direct road or a winding shortcut. Understanding these basics gives you superpowers when navigating networks of all kinds, from friendships to data systems. Think of connected components like groups at a school festival. Each group hangs out within itself but might not talk to other groups. The clustering coefficient, that's how cliquey a group is. If your friends are all also friends with each other, you're in a high clustering squad. These ideas help us figure out who's in tight circles and who might be more connected across communities. Centrality measures are at the heart of graph analysis. Picture degree centrality as the social butterfly, always surrounded by connections. Betweenness, that's the friend who connects two separate friend groups, the indispensable bridge. Closeness centrality, think of someone who can easily reach everyone in their network, like an effective manager. And eigenvector, that's not just about being well connected, it's about knowing the right people. Draw parallels to real world networks, be it friends, airports, or the internet, to help your audience understand the profound applications of network centrality. Degree centrality is simple but powerful. Imagine you're looking at your group chat. The person who messages with the most people, that's your high degree node. They're visible, accessible, and active. In a network, they often attract attention and spread information quickly. But being popular isn't everything. Betweenness is like being the hallway between two classrooms. Everything must go through you. These nodes are critical. They're not always the most popular, but they hold things together. They're often irreplaceable in a network, making them great points for influence or vulnerability. Closeness isn't about how many people you know, but how efficiently you can reach them. Imagine sending an urgent message across your company. The person with the best closeness centrality gets it out the fastest. In emergencies or communication systems, that speed can be everything. Eigenvector centrality is like elite networking. It's not just who you know, it's who they know. You might have fewer connections than someone else, but if your connections are powerhouses, that makes you influential too. This is how Google ranks websites and how you find the hidden VPs in a network. Before going deep into graph algorithms, we need a strong foundation in terminology. These core terms, degree, path, and various centrality types, will act as your toolkit for analyzing and making sense of any network. Let's explore these critical building blocks. Think of degree like popularity in a social context. If someone has many connections, chances are they have influence within the group. In your typical social network example, imagine Alice being described as central because most people in her community either know her or she knows them. When these definitions translate into graph metrics, they help data scientists identify high impact players, be it influencers in marketing, critical servers in IT, or even junctions in logistics networks. Visualizing degree gives us a quick snapshot of who or what matters most in a system. This simple code snippet demonstrates how to calculate the degree of a node, such as Alice, in a NetworkX graph. By running it, you'll see that Alice has a degree of 2, meaning she's directly connected to Bob and Eve. Encourage the audience to think about how this metric scales in real-world examples, where nodes might represent airports and edges signify flight connections, or when analyzing relationships in social media networks like Twitter. Play around with the graph by adding more nodes and edges. You'll see how degrees dynamically adjust. Paths are one of the most fundamental concepts in graph theory. Imagine you're navigating a city, the roads are edges and intersections are nodes. If you try to get from Alice to Charlie, the shortest way might be through Bob. But what if you want other criteria like road conditions or traffic? That's where weighted graphs come in. We'll focus on the basics and calculate the shortest path using NetworkX. Think of it as mapping efficiency in real life. This code snippet demonstrates how to find the shortest path between two nodes, Alice and Charlie, using NetworkX. First, we define a graph G and add some edges. Then, with the NXS shortest path function, it calculates the optimal route. Fun fact, algorithms like Digester's or BFS breadth first search often run behind the scenes for this calculation. Connected components are like islands in a network within the same island. Everyone is reachable, but there's no way to travel to another island without additional connections. This concept is particularly useful in areas like social network analysis, where we want to find clusters of tightly knit groups. For instance, imagine identifying close friend groups or isolated user clusters in a platform like Facebook. Let's explore this using NetworkX next. This example demonstrates how to find connected components using NetworkX. Here, we have a graph with two distinct clusters of connections. The inX connected components function identifies and returns these as separate sets. For instance, the first set contains Alice, Bob, and Eve, while the second set is Frank and Grace. Think about how this applies to real life, like finding isolated communities or subnetworks in a larger ecosystem. Centrality measures are like different types of importance scores for nodes in a network. Think of degree centrality as showing who has the most friends, while eigenvector centrality tells us who is the most influential in a social group, even if they don't have many direct friends. Betweenness centrality is like finding the best middleman, sitting on pivotal paths in communication. And don't forget closeness centrality, which identifies those network ninjas who can reach everyone the fastest. Every measure unveils a new layer of insight about your graph. This code walks through how to calculate betweenness centrality using NetworkX. You create a graph, connect nodes with edges, and then use the inX betweenness centrality function to identify key connectors. For example, a node like B might connect two larger subgroups in the network, making it critical for communication. This is particularly useful in applications like analyzing transportation hubs, social media influencers, or even supply chain bottlenecks. Think about it like this: the clustering coefficient checks how much your friends hang out with each other. Imagine Alice has three friends: Bob, Charlie, and Eve. If Bob is also friends with Charlie, and Charlie is friends with Eve, Alice's group would have a high clustering coefficient. But if Alice's friends don't know each other, the clustering coefficient would be low. This metric is essential for finding communities or evaluating close collaborations, whether in biology, social science, or team dynamics. Here's an example of calculating the clustering coefficient using NetworkX. First, we build a small graph with a few nodes. People like Alice, Bob, and Charlie and connections, their relationships. Using index clustering, we can measure how tightly knit each person's friend group is. You'll often notice nodes like Alice, who connects dense neighborhoods, will have high clustering values. This is perfect for uncovering communities in social or collaborative networks. Welcome to part 2 of the lecture. This is where we roll up our sleeves and dive into the practical side of graph analysis using Python. NetworkX is an incredibly powerful library, and by the end of this section, you'll be equipped with the foundational skills to create and manipulate graphs, calculate key metrics, and visualize your data. It's like having a Swiss Army knife for network science. Let's start with how to use NetworkX. Think of NetworkX as your trusted toolkit for handling graphs. Whether you're mapping a social network, building a transportation grid, or analyzing molecular interactions, NetworkX can power it all. In this section, I'll walk you through its core features and give you a feel for why it's a favorite among data scientists and network analysts alike. Let me give you a quick elevator pitch for NetworkX. It's Python's go-to library for all things graph related. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, it offers a generous set of tools to make graph creation and analysis a breeze. With built-in visualization capabilities, it keeps you from wasting time learning additional libraries just to see your results in action. Remember, data often tells its best stories through visualization, and NetworkX ensures you're equipped to present those stories effectively. Now, let's dig into the practical tools that NetworkX offers. First, the graph function is where everything begins. It's essentially giving birth to your graph universe, and you populate it with nodes and edges. Think of nodes as the actors in your story: people, locations, molecules, whatever you're analyzing. Edges, on the other hand, are the relationships between those actors. And visualization. That's like getting a bird's eye view of the entire drama. By the end of this section, you'll be ready to create, manipulate, and visualize your own graphs, all while feeling like a true network scientist. Here's our very first graph. We're using the NetworkX library to create nodes alleys. Bob, it's about and edges that connect them. Adding matplotlib helps us visualize this network. Notice how easy it is to build and see relationships between entities. Play around with node size, color, and layouts for better clarity in larger graphs. Now we'll dive into how to create and manipulate graphs in Python. Think of graphs as dynamic entities. You can add or remove nodes and edges, iterate over them, and apply transformations. These operations allow us to start shaping our data models according to real-world scenarios, uh, from simple social interactions to complex supply chains. Manipulating graphs is simple with NetworkX. Think about graphs like Lego pieces. Nodes are the blocks, and edges are the connections. You can add new blocks and nodes, snap on connections, edges, or inspect what you've built. With these foundational operations, you can customize networks to represent nearly any relationship or system. Here we're exploring the structure of a graph after adding nodes and edges. It's like inspecting a network blueprint to see who is connected and how. For instance, if we add a new node, Derek, and connect Derek to Alice, the graph updates dynamically. Use these commands to test and refine your graph building process. In this topic, we're focusing on how NetworkX helps us analyze graphs effectively. Graphs are more than just dots and lines. They represent relationships, patterns, and pathways in data. We'll look at different tools and metrics network provides to extract meaningful insights, making it an indispensable tool for network analysis. Let me walk you through four indispensable metrics that NetworkX uses to analyze graphs. First, degree centrality, which tells us how connected a node is. Think of it as the popularity score in a network. Next, shortest path calculates the fastest or most efficient way to traverse from one node to another. This comes in handy for things like transportation systems or social networks. Clustering coefficient zooms in on local neighborhoods by measuring how interconnected a node's friends are, which is key for identifying tightly knit communities. Lastly, betweenness centrality helps us pinpoint bottlenecks or bridges by assessing which nodes lie on the majority of shortest paths, often acting as gatekeepers for information or resources. In this section, We'll zoom in on one of the most critical concepts in network science: centrality. Centrality measures tell us which nodes hold more sway in the network, whether it's through direct connections, strategic placement, or influence over flows. Let's see how we can leverage these measures to uncover hidden influencers and optimize network operation. Let's talk about betweenness centrality. One of the most intriguing metrics: imagine being the person everyone has to talk to in order to connect with others. You're essentially the bridge that holds the network together. Betweenness centrality calculates this by analyzing how often a node appears on the shortest path between any two others. For example, social media influencers often have high betweenness. They connect diverse parts of a network and can spread messages widely. In transportation, it might reveal highways or intersections critical to keeping traffic moving. If these nodes fail, the disruptions can cascade through the network, which is why this metric is essential when designing robust systems. Betweenness centrality comes into play when we're looking for those pivotal nodes that make systems tick, or in some cases, that act as choke points. Think of a logistics hub like a major airport. If you shut down Chicago O'Hare, you disrupt tons of connections globally. Similarly, this concept applies in hierarchical teams. There's often one key person who bridges two separate groups or sections. And as the example touches on, you can even apply this to criminal networks by identifying power brokers. For this slide, think critically. Where else can identifying bridges be impactful? Could it apply to your own research, systems biology, transportation, social networks? This code snippet is great to engage in hands-on learning. What are we doing here? First, we build a small graph using example edges. It's like you're interconnecting people or locations. Next, we apply network as between us a centrality function to obtain each node's centrality score. Sorting those scores by their value gives us the most pivotal nodes in terms of bridging connectivity. Now, take this example and customize it. Think of a graph made of your classmates, collaboration projects, or even your neighborhood's infrastructure. Who or what plays the connector role there? This chapter helps make the leap from theory to practice. We've got all these cool graph concepts: nodes, edges, centrality. But how do they apply to the real world? That's what this section is about. We'll discuss real life networks and how we study them to uncover hidden patterns and solve problems. Keep an open mind. Whether you're analyzing a fictional dataset, exploring transportation efficiency, or decoding networks in social systems, the applications are endless. Les Miserables might seem like a classic French novel, but here's the interesting twist. It's also a rich dataset for graph analysis. In this section, we'll treat the characters as nodes and model the relationships between them as edges. Who are the most connected characters? How do these connections define the story structure? By applying graph theory here, we're not just analyzing data, we're discovering storytelling patterns. After all, graphs don't have to be limited to industries. They can reveal insights in art, literature, and beyond. The Les Miserables co-appearance graph is an excellent way to explore complex character relationships in literature. Each node in this graph is a character, and the edges show when two characters appear in the same chapter. Why does this matter? For example, we might find that some characters only connect within small storylines, forming clusters, while others serve as bridges between entirely different parts of the book. This exercise reveals the structure of the narrative in a way that's easy to visualize and think about. It's not just applicable to literature. Similar graphs help researchers analyze social relationships, historical events, and collaboration patterns across domains. Here, we bring the Les Miserables network to life using Python and networks. This snippet first loads a pre-built graph of characters from the novel and then visualizes it with meaningful layout adjustments. I've included customizable options like changing the node size, color, and title to make the graph easier to interpret. Imagine seeing how Javert connects to Valjean or how Fantine interacts with other characters. It's like mapping the heartbeat of the story. When analyzing, ask questions like who is the most central character or which clusters could represent critical subplots. Visualization makes it much easier to answer these questions. Now, let's take the visualization a step further. In this version of the Les Miserables character network, we've added two key layers of information centrality and community structure. Node size reflects degree centrality, how many other characters each one connects with. Larger nodes like Valjean and Javert indicate major roles in the story's social structure. Node color represents different communities detected in the graph. These clusters likely correspond to subplots or thematic groups in the novel. For instance, the red group contains revolutionary characters like Enjolras, Gavroche, and Bahorel. The thickness of edges shows how frequently characters appear together. Thicker lines represent stronger narrative ties. This way, we're not just seeing who's present, we're seeing how the story is structured, which groups drive the plot, and who acts as bridges between them. By combining structural metrics with visual design, the graph becomes a powerful storytelling tool in itself. Let's turn our attention now to the Marvel Universe. This network captures superhero co-appearances in comic books to analyze who works with whom. Picture the Avengers, X-Men, and Spider-Man's countless collaborations visualized as an expansive network of heroes and their alliances. These types of networks, drawn from pop culture, are not just fun, they're also practical models for understanding real-world collaborations, team dynamics, and even marketing strategies around key players. For instance, looking at this graph could reveal which characters are central to the Marvel Universe operations and which are more peripheral. The Marvel co-appearance graph offers a fascinating lens into one of the world's most beloved fictional universes. In this visualization, each superhero is a node and edges represent co-appearances. Essentially, if two heroes work together in any given issue, they get connected. What patterns might emerge? You might notice tight clusters like the Avengers or Fantastic Four. But who's the real glue of the Marvel Universe? Centrality measures can help answer that. Spider-Man, for instance, often bridges separate groups like the Avengers and the X-Men. Think of how this also applies to other domains. Understanding collaboration in any field is a superpower in itself. In this example, we're diving into Marvel's universe of superheroes by constructing a graph where the heroes are nodes and edges represent co-appearances in comic issues. Degree centrality will help us find the most connected and therefore potentially the most influential heroes in the network. Think of characters like Spider-Man or Iron Man who frequently collaborate. After running this code, you'll get a sorted list of influential superheroes based on their degree centrality. This metric is particularly useful to identify the most interconnected players in collaborative environments such as Marvel's universe or even real world networks like company teams or professional collaborations. Encourage learners to think about how this method could be adapted to uncover important figures in other social or professional contexts. This slide shows how we analyze the Marvel Universe as a social network. Each hero is a node, and the connection means they appear together in a comic. We calculated degree centrality to find the most connected and likely influential heroes. As expected, names like Captain America, Spider-Man, and Iron Man come out on top. You'll notice the full network is extremely dense, almost unreadable. That's why we zoomed into a subgraph of the top 30 heroes. Even then, it's still quite complex, so the key insight here isn't just visual, it's quantitative. The heroes with the most connections often act as bridges across different groups, like the Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four. Let's dive into a different kind of influence, not just who's most popular, but who connects the dots. We're now looking at betweenness centrality, a measure that tells us how often a hero sits between other heroes on the shortest path in the network. In other words, if you imagine information or action needing to travel from one hero to another, who does it pass through most often? It's like a highway system. Heroes with high betweenness are the intersections or transfer hubs where different roads converge. If they disappear, entire parts of the network might fall apart. And guess who shows up at the top? Spider-Man. He's not just popular. He's everywhere. He teams up with the Avengers, drops in on the X-Men, and even has his own universe of allies. He connects multiple communities that wouldn't otherwise be linked. Captain America and Iron Man also rank high. They're the kind of heroes who bring people together, especially when the Marvel Universe faces big threats. Now look at Wolverine and Havoc. They don't have the most friends, but they still act as bridges between key groups. That's the magic of betweenness centrality. You don't need to be the most connected. You just need to be strategically positioned. So the lesson here, in networks, real or fictional, it's not just about who you know. It's also about who depends on you to reach others. That's true power. Now let's uncover the hidden themes in the Marvel Universe. Using a method called greedy modularity, we detected 69 communities. Think of them as unofficial superhero squads. Some groups are huge with over 2,000 members. Others are smaller, tighter cliques like the street level heroes or cosmic adventurers. Each community includes heroes who tend to appear together in storylines, battles, or shared missions. What does this tell us? Even in a chaotic universe, patterns of collaboration naturally emerge. It's like Marvel has its own built-in social structure, and we just mapped it. Now let's talk about closeness centrality, or how quickly a hero can reach everyone else in the network. In simple terms, a high closeness score means you're never far away from anyone. You're just a few steps from anyone in the universe. So who are the Marvel heroes with the best network reach? Captain America tops the list. No surprise there. He's respected, connected, and seems to be everywhere at once. Next up, Spider-Man and Iron Man, heroes who jump between teams and storylines with ease. Also in the top 5, Thing and Mr. Fantastic, key members of the Fantastic Four. They might not be the loudest heroes, but they're well positioned, close to others, and able to act fast. So what's the lesson here? Heroes with high closeness are like fast messengers or first responders. In crisis or communication, they're the ones who reach others fastest, and that's a superpower on its own. Let's take a step back and look at the overall structure of the Marvel Network. We found four connected components, in other words, four separate chunks of the universe where heroes are linked together. But here's the key point: one of those components is massive, with over 6,400 heroes, all part of the same giant network. This means that most Marvel characters are just a few connections away from each other. Through teams, story arcs, or shared villains, it's a tightly woven universe. Even if some heroes never meet directly, they're still part of the same web. And that's what makes this network so rich. It's not just about individual stories, but how everything connects. Let's dive into the concept of ego networks. We all have one, whether it's on Facebook, LinkedIn, or even in real life. Simply put, an ego network is centered around one individual, the ego, and all the connections they have aid their authors. For example, imagine you're the ego on Facebook. Your ego network includes all your direct friends and the connections among them. It's a powerful way to analyze how people, ideas, or even influence radiates from a single point. Keep an eye on group patterns and key individuals who act as bridges between clusters. This is particularly useful in understanding how information or influence spreads. Picture yourself as the center of your own social universe. Your ego network is a snapshot of how you're connected to others. Nodes are your friends, coworkers, or close connections, while edges show how they relate to you and, crucially, how they relate to each other. For example, you may find that your friends from school form one cluster while your colleagues form another. Studying ego networks helps us uncover how influence or ideas might spread, identify tightly knit groups, and even spot connectors who bridge multiple groups. In professional contexts, this kind of analysis can tease out team dynamics or innovation potential within a company. Let's explore why ego networks are so useful. Take a moment to think about your own network. Who is that one person who seems to know everyone, connecting different groups of people in unexpected ways? This person likely plays a key role as a bridge across communities, whether by sharing information, solving problems, or supporting connections. Similarly, identifying clusters in ego networks can reveal how different groups, like family members vs. classmates, are structured. This knowledge has real-world implications, from designing effective marketing campaigns to understanding organizational bottlenecks or even guiding team collaborations. Encourage learners to reflect on how their own networks operate. It's a great way to personalize the concept. In this chapter, we'll explore how graph analysis tools can be applied to uncover hidden structures and key players within complex networks, such as terrorist organizations. By mapping these connections, we shed light on how individuals and subgroups interact, potentially enabling better decision making for security and policy interventions. Let's dive into this fascinating and highly impactful use case. The focus of this section is to outline the high-level goals of examining a terrorist network. We leverage the 2002 network from Krebs, which maps relationships between known individuals in the context of terrorism. By analyzing such data, we aim to identify critical nodes, clusters, and pathways that define the structure of the organization. While the topic is sensitive, it's an excellent practical application of network science principles and demonstrates the power of graph analysis in tackling real-world challenges. For this project, we focus on understanding the goals of terrorist network analysis. The three primary objectives here are to map the connections in the network, pinpoint the most crucial individuals or groups within it, and visualize the structure using graph analysis tools. The chosen dataset, Krebs 2002, is particularly important because it highlights how individual relationships form the backbone of any organization, whether legitimate or illicit. As we proceed, think about how this same methodology could apply to mapping other systems from social networks to corporate structures. Graph analysis is not just about looking at data, it's about strategically moving through phases to extract actionable insights. Let's break down this process step by step. First, we load the data and preprocess it to ensure it's graph ready. Next, we construct the graph where individuals are nodes and relationships are edges. Once the graph is ready, we dive into analysis, computing centrality to find key individuals and applying clustering to uncover communities. Finally, visualizing the data helps us interpret all these metrics in a meaningful way. Follow along and think about how you can adapt these steps for different types of networks in your domain. In this code snippet, we're starting our journey into graph creation and visualization. The first step is loading real-world data, in this case, an edge list from the terrorists CSV file. The source and target columns define who is connected to whom in this network. Using NetworkX from Pandas edge list, we construct a graph object automatically from that data. Then we visualize the graph. The inx draw function does a quick rendering of the network, making it immediately clear where the connections exist. The nodes are styled with an orange highlight for clarity, and their labels are adjusted to enhance readability. If you're working with real datasets, it's critical to ensure your visualizations are both informative and easy to interpret. The takeaway here isn't just about coding. It's about how we use graphs to uncover underlying patterns. Ask yourself, what does the structure of this network reveal? What do the central or isolated nodes mean? Keep these questions in mind as we keep exploring. Here we see the top 10 individuals sorted by betweenness centrality, a metric that tells us how often a node lies on the shortest path between others. In other words, who controls the flow of information. Mohammed Data Index 32 leads with a striking score of 0.587, indicating he was the network's primary bridge, the person through whom most coordination likely passed. Following him, Esid Sami bin Kimais and Zacharias Mosawi also rank high, suggesting they served as crucial relays between otherwise disconnected cells. Lower scores, such as Ramzi bin al-Shib 0.048, still signify key roles, though with more localized influence. So why focus on betweenness? Because it reveals bottlenecks and gatekeepers, the people whose removal would most disrupt communication. Remember, a high score doesn't always mean leadership. It indicates strategic positioning, cross-reference with context and domain expertise. As you analyze other networks, use this same metric to uncover your system's hidden highways, choke points, and critical actors. By leveraging betweenness centrality, we can identify the key connectors in a network, a vital insight for disrupting or understanding covert operations. Graphs are powerful tools, but with great power comes great responsibility. Whenever we analyze sensitive data like terrorist networks, ethical considerations must be at the forefront of our work. This means abiding by privacy rules, protecting the anonymity of individuals, and ensuring that all findings are presented constructively. For instance, imagine you're analyzing social media connections. Could your insights unintentionally harm individual users? When uncovering keynotes in a terrorist network, are you respecting privacy, especially for misplaced or incomplete datasets? it's worth asking tough questions like these to ensure your work contributes positively to society. Always remember, ethics isn't an afterthought. From the outset of any project, establish frameworks that ensure data is handled with care. This includes informing stakeholders, assessing risks, and obtaining proper permissions. As stewards of big data, we must prioritize humanity over metrics. This slide emphasizes the vital importance of ethical graph analysis. Data graphs, especially for networks involving people, can hold delicate information. For instance, in cases like criminal studies or healthcare systems, improper analysis could lead to unintended biases or harm. When graphs can impact real lives, we need strict caution. For example, always opt for anonymized datasets or confirm that your findings won't single out individuals unfairly. Think about the broader societal implications of your work. Can your analysis be used positively? For every line of code you write, imagine sitting in front of a global audience justifying your project. Would your reasoning hold up? Ethics isn't just a checklist, it's a mindset. Let's always work toward applications that advance our understanding without causing unintended consequences. We're approaching the conclusion of this session, but this should feel like just the start of your journey into graph analytics. In this chapter, we'll reflect on everything covered so far and think about how to translate theory into impactful real-world applications. Graphs aren't just tools, they're a way of thinking. Recognizing how systems, relationships, and structures interconnect can provide transformative insights across many disciplines. Let's wrap up by looking at the broader picture, how graph analytics inspires action and opens the door to solving complex, meaningful problems. Let's recap the key highlights from today's session. First up, graphs give us the power to unravel complex systems, whether it's mapping friendships, network traffic, or understanding protein pathways. Networks is your Swiss Army knife for graphs. We explored how to calculate metrics, find the most important connections, and visualize it all beautifully. Finally, think globally, apply locally. Graphs are everywhere, from your social media feed to plotting optimal vaccine distribution routes. Remember, the core insight today is connectivity. The world is a network ripe for exploration with the right tools. Before we go further, I want to take a moment to discuss why graphs should matter to you personally, no matter your field. Graphs are an incredibly flexible framework. Imagine mapping relationships in a team project, understanding how resources flow in a supply chain, or even analyzing who influences trends in social media. If you're curious, ambitious, and love meaningful insights, graph thinking is a skill that brings structure to chaos. This single concept, that relationships define structure and behavior, can elevate your data projects and spark innovative solutions. Let's explore. Let's take a simple but powerful idea. A graph can describe almost anything as long as it involves relationships and connections. Think LinkedIn one, look at your graph, shows who's in your professional circle, who connects different industries, and how information flows. This idea repeats across domains. In transportation, where engineers build efficient subway systems by analyzing roads as interconnected graphs, or life sciences, where researchers decode human biology by studying gene interaction networks. Most importantly, graph thinking trains your brain to organize chaos, to find structure and solve real world problems effectively. To inspire you, let's look at just a few areas where graph thinking truly shines. Social networks seem obvious, right? But beyond the fun, Graphs reveal things like how misinformation spreads or who's the real trendsetter in your LinkedIn connections. Then there's logistics. A company like Amazon uses graph algorithms to keep deliveries fast and efficient across global routes. And have you ever had Netflix recommend you a show you didn't know existed but loved? That's graph thinking in action, predicting your preferences through collaborative filtering. Even in crime fighting, graphs map criminal networks to pinpoint key coordinators. This is the energy graphs bring. They turn messy data into actionable insights. This section is all about taking what you've learned today and applying it in meaningful, creative ways. Don't limit yourself to examples we covered. Think outside the box! Whether it's in your friend group, the businesses in your neighborhood, or even your daily commute, everything can be represented as a graph. The challenge is to map it out, analyze it, and uncover insights you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. Let's explore how you can get started with graph thinking in your domain. When diving into graph-based analysis, think about networks that directly impact your life or career. For example, have you ever wondered who has the most influence in your study group? Or perhaps you've spotted inefficiencies in your daily subway journeys that a graph model might reveal. The idea isn't just to play with data, but to develop a mindset that recognizes connections and sees opportunities to improve systems. Start simple and ask questions. Graphs are great at answering who, what, and how. The beauty of graph analysis is its versatility. It applies to every field. Whether you're tracking how ideas spread on social media, optimizing supply chains in logistics, or analyzing protein interactions in biology, the approach is the same. Focus on relationships and flows and ask, what can I predict or improve here? Even personal interests, like mapping your daily routine, can offer surprising insights. Challenge yourself to think critically. Where are the connections and what story do they tell? This final challenge is where theory meets practice. Think of it as your opportunity to experiment with graph applications in real world or personal scenarios. Start small, a simple network of your close friends, their favorite hobbies, and the connections between them can reveal fascinating patterns. If you're looking for larger datasets, public resources like Marvel superhero collaborations or subway route datasets are excellent playgrounds. Remember, there's no wrong way to start. The goal is to gain confidence and have fun. Let's take what we've learned and dive into practical projects. First, mapping a friendship network is a fun way to explore graphs. Who in your social circle is the glue that connects everyone. If you love stories, datasets like Les Mis are fascinating for visualizing relationships between characters and uncovering surprising clusters. For a bigger challenge, why not tackle a real-world problem? Transportation networks are a great choice. Use graph analysis to propose route improvements or analyze common traffic patterns. Whatever you do, focus on experimenting and storytelling. Sharing insights from graphs is how we deepen understanding and spark collaboration. So go for it and flex your graph thinking muscles. We're reaching the end of this session, but this is just the beginning of your graph journey. It's time to reflect. When you think about graphs, do you notice how many areas they apply to? From analyzing relationships in your social circles to mapping global logistics systems, graphs are everywhere. Spend a moment asking yourself, what was the most valuable thing you learned today that you're eager to apply? Reflection solidifies learning, and sharing these ideas with others can often spark even deeper insights. So let's take stock of what we've covered and prepare to put it into action. Let's revisit our key takeaways together. First, we explored how to model relationships as graphs, turning overwhelming complexity into clear visualizations. Then, we dove into NetworkX, learning how to programmatically create, manipulate, and analyze graphs, the Swiss Army knife for graph thinkers. Finally, we explored practical applications, proving that this knowledge isn't just theoretical, it's actionable. Before we close, consider how this knowledge relates to your world. What challenges or datasets could you model as graphs? This might just unlock a way of thinking that transforms your analysis. As we wrap up, let's think beyond just the technical. The idea of connection is something you can apply everywhere: work, study, even in your relationships. Collaborating with peers is like building a class network. Every insight shared increases mutual value. Professionally, graph-inspired stories make for compelling interviews or presentations. Think of it as a framework to connect dots and solve complex challenges both in your work and broader life. Ultimately, graph thinking teaches us to view the world as an interconnected system that holds immense opportunities for creativity and innovation. So carry this mindset into everything you do. Thank you